All right, good evening. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Village of Vernon Hills. We need to start with a roll call.
Chairman Morris.
Here.
Mr. Ballou.
Present.
Ms. Cotton.
Here.
Mr. Hesner.
Here.
Mr. Heidner.
Here.
Mr. Mulcrone. Mr. Gorog.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay. The first thing on tonight's agenda is case number 1215. It is a petition filed requesting pursuant to the Code of Ordinances, 1, approval to amend the zoning classification of the property that we're going to refer to in a moment from OR&D Office Research and Development to R7 Multifamily Residential PUD in B1 General Business, approval of a special use permit for a planned unit development, approval of certain special use permits for the commercial lot on the property, preliminary site and landscape plan approvals, preliminary approval of the architectural elevations, and preliminary approval of the plat of subdivision. Specifically, we're talking about the combined properties, which were formerly known as Kelly's Day Camp and Lycum Tap, which is approximately 32 acres and are located southeast of Corporate Woods Parkway on Route 45 in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Before we ask anyone from the petitioner to speak, we have to note for the record that Commissioner Jeff Mulcrone has recused himself from participation in this evening's meeting because of relationship with one of the professionals for the petitioner. Okay, so with that, we'd ask who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner. Okay, the primary rule we have, as you probably know, is you need to speak either from the stationary microphone or hopefully there's a handheld one there. Yes.
There is.
Okay. Is anyone else going to speak with you? Or is anyone else going to talk on your behalf?
There will be many other presenters.
Okay, then why don't we do this all at once? Whoever is going to present testimony on behalf of this petition, if you can come forward.
Okay.
You want to just identify who everyone is, then we'll swear them all in. And there'll be a
Indeed.
test later.
My name is Warren James, principal.
Mike Rolfs with Hamilton Partners. Tim Dorr with K. Walt Hamilton. Matt Nix with P&Z Real Estate. Joe Saban with BSB Design.
Anyone else going to speak for you on your behalf? No? Okay, then we ask anyone who's going to speak, they'd raise their right hand, and we ask that you swear or affirm that the testimony and evidence you're about to give before this commission of the Village of Vernon Hills shall be the truth.
Do.
All right, you are on.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Warren James. I'm a principal at the P&Z Real Estate Group, and I am pleased to be able to present our plans for the Oaks of Vernon Hills to you this evening. With me tonight, previously sworn in, Scott Freres, the Lakota Group, Steve Spinell, my business partner, P&Z Real Estate Group, Mike Rolfs, the principal at Hamilton Partners, my partner Matt Nix, behind him Tim Doran with K. Walt Hamilton, Kevin McKaylee with P&Z Real Estate Group, Bob Cowie with Manhard Cowie, Tim Beachick with Hamilton Partners, and Joe Safin with Bloodgood Sharpbuster Architects. Not all of us will be speaking. We'll try and be succinct, but we will try and make a thorough presentation and be happy to answer any of your questions at this time or after the presentation. As an outline, what we'd like to cover is an introduction, a review of our experience, the market, and the proposed land use. That'll be presented by Matt. Scott Freres will discuss the site plan and the landscape plans. The architecture will be addressed by Joe Safin. Tim Dorn will deal with the traffic. Matt will address the requested variance, and Steve will address the community benefits. We were here for a concept presentation a few weeks ago, and at that time I had told you that we were working towards acquiring an adjacent piece of property that would allow us to do an eastern access. I'm happy to report that as of today, we do have that property under contract, so that will alter some of our proposed plans. We have presented two alternatives, one plan with two entrances, the other with an eastern access. We will be discussing how we would propose to integrate that property and the eastern access into the overall site. So, all of us have been in the development business for many years. Myself personally, for about the past 25 years, we have had the good fortune to work together on many projects, many successful projects, and we're happy to bring that experience to bear, all of our collective knowledge and wisdom on the Oaks of Vernon Hills. Some of the nearby projects that you may be familiar with: Waterbury Place in Buffalo Grove, which is located on Half Day Road, just east of the railroad tracks, not too far from here. That is a development that was, of which I am a principal, as well as Steve Spinell. Also nearby is in your town of Vernon Hills is Port Clinton Place, where Steve Spinell and I collaborated as the constructors of the townhomes and the interiors of the condominium units. We worked with Matt Nix, who was at the time leading that project for the developer. As I noted, we are here to present our plans. I'm not going to belabor the depth of our experience, but we have put a collective effort towards designing an appropriate and context-sensitive plan, and look forward to sharing with you the details. Matt?
Thanks, Warren. Thank you to members of Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Matt Nix, and before we get into the details of the plan, just wanted to revisit, one of the reasons we're here in response to the market. Really responding to the fundamental shift in attitudes towards for sale and rental housing. With the downturn in the housing market, we're seeing, or rapidly moving towards, what we'll refer to as a new normal. Back to a time when rental housing was an important component within the housing market. It was a viable part of the general lifestyle of residents in the community. So on the demand side, we're really responding to this renter by choice market. We're seeing 24-year-old to 36-year-old professionals deferring and delaying the decision to purchase homes. They still are seeking highly amenitized communities, new construction, good quality, good interior condo quality finishes. They're just more interested in the flexibility of renting rather than owning. So that's really one of the key markets we're responding to. We also see a strong demand from the empty nesters. I think we all anecdotally have an experience where we know someone that has either recently sold their home or they're still trying to sell their home once their children leave. In the case, once they finally have been able to sell that home, we're finding that they're really not jumping back into the for sale market. At the same time, they still have demands for, they like direct access to their homes. They like two-car garages, and we're going to talk a little bit about a product that we're introducing that responds to that market. And finally, we see strong demand from the corporate housing environment. We believe that a high-quality rental housing component is very important for Vernon Hills and its business community. We're regularly reaching out to the human resource departments of a variety of major employers that constantly tell us that they're looking for places for their employees to live. In particular, we've got experience with a lot of the pharmaceutical companies working up and down the corridor that often have contract employees that are coming for a year or two. In many cases, they're coming from out of the country, and they really are not interested in purchasing a home. It doesn't make sense. The transactional costs don't make sense, but they want high-quality housing close to employment. On the supply side, there's really only one, as we deem it, one what we'll call purpose-built, high-quality luxury rental community in Vernon Hills. We track the shadow market. That would be the condos and the townhomes that were purchased that aren't selling, and they're going back on the market by the private owners for rental housing. We track those, and that supply is getting tighter and tighter. And we understand that there aren't any other multifamily applications before the village right now. This slide is just to take a little slight step back and look at the overall Lake County market. You'll see that the bar graphs show occupancies for 2010, 2011, and 2012. We just got this as part of a market study we commissioned specifically for this site by Appraisal Research Counselors, one of the leading groups that tracks rental housing. You'll see that kind of consistent with the decline in home ownership over the last 3 years, the occupancy rates have gone up from 90 to 95%. And generally speaking, when you are in excess of 95%, that's virtually an occupied project, given that there's always some turn. So there's very tight demand, or tight supply. You also note that in the last 18 years, in all of Lake County, there's only been just over 1,700 rental apartments built, showing really how little new product has been introduced into the marketplace. And of the 2,000 suburban apartment units that are under construction right now, there's not a single property in Lake County. When we talked about high-quality rental housing being an important component of a healthy community, we really see this as an opportunity for Vernon Hills to respond to that demand with our project. Excuse me. And we'll be showing you images of the product we're proposing to build, but just briefly, we're introducing what we'll refer to as the flats. Those are in elevator-served buildings, single-level traditional units ranging from just under 700 square feet to just under 1,200 square feet as 2 bedrooms. Price ranges from $1,300 to $1,900 a month. We see that as really targeting young professionals, this corporate housing demand. Given that the buildings are served by elevators, we also see it as a nice alternate to seniors, as an independent housing option. The row home product, which we'll talk about in greater detail from design, again, this has been a very popular for-sale housing product, and we're taking it, we believe, a unique spin where we're offering it in a rental opportunity, 1,400 to 1,800 square foot 2 and 3 bedroom units. We see this as an ideal product type for downsizing empty nesters that still want to have direct entry into their homes. They want to have 2-car garages. They have storage needs. We also see it as being very attractive for young professionals starting families. And from a land use standpoint, the image that you see before you shows the site in the middle, and then the first ring is 1/2 mile, the second ring is 1 mile. And you can really see how attractive this location is for a housing community such as we're proposing. The yellow indicates all the residential housing that's surrounding the site. What attracts us is the walkable amenities, with retail at the town center, restaurants, Lifetime Fitness, especially with this eastern access, is very accessible. Schools, library, et cetera, all the things that we believe are going to be great amenities for our residents. It's still a suburban apartment community. People will have cars, but it does lend the opportunity where people can walk to amenities. Proximity to the metro, it's about 1 mile away. In terms of its viability as a community, it's got great visibility off of Route 45 with healthy traffic counts, which are important to maintain occupancy, and yet the first building is set almost 200 feet off of Route 45, so it's still tucked back nicely. And then finally, you'll see in the next aerial, it's a heavily wooded buffer between the residential use and the adjacent commercial uses. So we think the land use is very compatible. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Freres, who's going to walk you through the planning and landscaping of the project.
Thank you, Matt. Matt mentioned very quickly the plan before this evening is nestled into a wooded site, and I think we had a question last time, and I just want to clarify because I think this aerial helps illustrate the site as it exists today, that the majority of that wooded character of the site exists on the front half of the project, and there's been a concerted effort in the site plan process to maintain that, preserve that, and protect the real quality of the existing tree stand that's at the front half of that site. The back half was the active part of the day camp, and for most intensive purposes is open space and perimeter buffer plantings. That's an important fact, particularly as related to the, oops, jump ahead here if I can just jump that off. I can jump to the site plan, and we talk about the overall site and the character of the site from the perspective of access off of 45. Warren briefly touched on the eastern access, which I will show you in just a minute in terms of the alternates for that. Suffice it to say, the land plan that we brought before you last month shows a main spine road, very similar character as before. Main spine road coming off of Route 45, the primary access to the north-south access. There was a secondary access right in, right out, defined by the cul-de-sac on the southeast portion of the site. That front half of the site, the 29-acre site, represents the tree wooded area. If you can see on the lower portion of that site plan, that's the savanna, that's part of the protection or preservation zone that we've talked about. And the perimeter buffer areas that surround the site really are an adjacency to our neighbors to the west, Tetra Pak, and then certainly our neighbors in the Corporate Woods Office Park to the east, and the access out to Forest Edge Drive, which we'll talk about. The site contains 17 buildings, 8 of which are a 3-story flat product that Matt talked about and Joe will talk about in a little bit more detail in just a minute. They are a 3-story apartment building. They have parking provided proximate to those individual buildings, and they are set up in clustered formats. The main spine road does not have any parking on it. That is our primary access. All of the drives are private. And with that being said, the internal drives are the loops that make up the, and I'll see if I can, oops, if I can get this to Matt. You told me there it is. There's my clicker. The loops that come off of that provide the access and the proximate parking in front of each of these buildings. The apartment buildings, or the flat buildings, if I can get rid of that thing, that'd be great. There we go. The flat buildings provide individual garage parking at the first floor level, 1 garage space, 1 space that is on a pad in front of that garage, and then off-street or our circulator parking that moves around each of these pad areas. The row home portions, there's 9 tuck-under row, there are 9 3-story building tuck-under products. Those are the neo-traditional row homes that really flank the northwest and the southeast corner of the site in individual pods, represented by the lighter color building massings up here, and then down in the southeast corner down there. So we've got several neighborhoods that make up the perimeter of the site. I'll talk a little bit about the tree preservation, tree loss as part of the landscape portion of this discussion. But to suffice to say, there's multiple neighborhoods or pods as part of this plan. The northwest corner representing the tuck-under area. You can see the neo-traditional street fronting character, open space character of this product. The parking in a two-car garage parking off of a rear service area, additional full pad parking behind those areas to make up the parking difference, as well as guest parking, visitor parking out in front of those along the roadway. The northeast corner, or the apartments or the flat buildings, as Matt talked about, are organized around major open spaces in the site. There are 3 active open spaces. I'll talk about those as part of the landscape character, but suffice it to say, they are organized around major open elements with all of the units facing onto those. The parking supported off of what we call little tuck-unders or eyebrow areas that are off of the main drive. So the goal was to take parking, pull it off of those main drive areas, hide it behind landscaping, visual screening, and then provide access, easy access to resident parking in front of, along the sides of, or off of these parking garage areas off the front of each of these buildings. The central area, the core area of the site, the kind of the home base, is the location for our clubhouse feature. It is meant to provide a range of amenities, exercise, open space, barbecue grills, a pool facility, meeting rooms or open space for the community to use, as well as the marketing efforts and the sales efforts of the center. It's about a 6,000 square foot building, and it's organized around one of our water retention areas, which again I'll talk about a little bit in terms of the character of the landscape around that portion area. and there is a little bit more detail showing the character of the pool deck area. We have a little council ring area with the fire pit, and some other opportunities for outdoor seating framed by a U-shaped clubhouse facility. The southern end, again, organized around open space, the flat buildings, the apartment buildings, same configuration, same attention to detail in terms of hiding and tucking off that parking off of the main loop drive as you come in or off of the main spine road. To the south end, the cluster of neo-traditional tuck-unders. Again, street-facing, creating that character of a street wall and street presence with parking tucked into a little court area off the back, servicing, loading of garbage and trash would be off of this area as well. And as we've shown and as we've talked about, the roundabout and that access initially envisioned as the secondary point of access off of Route 45. The south, I would call it the southwest, or our entrance area off of it, is the preserved oak savanna area, very important from that visual picture I showed you before in terms of the aerial, to maintain that character, that wooded character. Matt and Warren both described that as being amply set back off of Route 45, so when you really come into the site, there's a period of time before you even see or experience the buildings. In this area, about almost 60 trees have been preserved in this area. I think there were 59 trees, 53 of those have been preserved. In terms of the quality and character, there's pedestrian trails and access throughout the entire site, connecting each of those pods and each of those neighborhoods to this open space. We'll talk about briefly in the landscape character, a dog run or a dog park area at this portion of the site so folks can bring their dogs into a defined, controlled space. A discussion, a point of importance in the process was the desire to identify the opportunity to get to the east with the eastern access route. Warren brought that up this evening. This exhibit shows the existing plan on the left, which is what we've presented before, which is our land plan that we are presenting and the components of it which we're asking for. But this evening, we're showing you the connection, the discussion that has occurred to move that portion of this forward has resulted in a positive direction. The east-west access drive to connect to Forest Edge is shown on this plan, and in doing so, vacates that right-in, right-out access off of Route 45. So the land planning picture, the cul-de-sac picture, the character of open space, green space along here is maintained. The access is removed, the goal being a direct connection to the east to Forest Edge as part of this plan, and a little blow-up that shows you the character of that in a little bit more detail, providing that link more affectionately referred to as the Rissman property to the east is this area, this wooded area to the immediate east as part of that planning opportunity. Landscaping, we briefly talked about it last time. We have addressed in these slides and addressed in our global planting palette the need and desire to make sure that we have a good range of native plant species, including oaks, including other additional natives, understory, as well as large deciduous canopy trees throughout the site, the components of which in terms of landscape character are defined in the row home foundation typical planting package shown before you above, the character of which is defined in the images to the lower right or in the upper right, which are projects that we've built and we intend to maintain that same quality and consistency through this project. The multifamily building, the flats, the apartment building, the same character quality in terms of landscape character. While we have a palette of all the plants that are shown, there's obviously other ones that we can include in here. We are not necessarily using all of these. We're using these as the palette that we're going to build from and use a common theme throughout the entire site. Again, the images showing the quality and character we intend to achieve. Stormwater detention is meant to be a naturalized zone. It is going to be carefully planted with a range of native species, seed mixes, moving from mesic up to drier slope conditions. But suffice it to say, it'll have a character very similar. The images that you see off to the left are Waterbury and Buffalo Grove, very similar in character and quality. Those also come with the need for good maintenance practices and procedures to make sure that that's achieved in terms of that character. We're well aware of that. And to the south, the character of the oak savanna lends itself to the idea of a council ring, very similar to what we presented last time, the idea of a sitting pocket, very passive recreation space really meant to be a visual space, but providing that opportunity for dog owners in the area to use this as a confined, controlled environment for their pets. I think with that is Joe. Want the mic? You forgot to pass it
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm Joe Safin. I'm a partner with BSB Design, and we're the architect for the project. As a company, we're seeing a big resurgence in the multifamily market around the country. Not just here in Chicago, but a variety of other cities are really looking at these types of projects. What I thought I'd do a little tonight is talk a little bit about the architecture that we're proposing. What you see here is the front elevation of our multifamily building. We show the three different potential color schemes. Scheme A was the original color palette that we presented. Scheme D is a new one. It's sort of a range of different colors. The original one was very bold, a lot of color. Scheme C sort of tones down those colors, and then Scheme D is somewhere in between. This is something that we want to work with the village and make sure we're all happy with what we want to do, and work back and forth and start a dialogue with what color package we want to propose and end up with. Also, these elevations shows the materials that we're proposing. We're showing a little bit of brick in certain areas along here with a little bit of bounce up. We like to have the brick go up and down in different areas to add interest. We feel that a wainscoting of brick or maybe a single story of brick tends to get lost with the landscaping, so we have a variety of locations where we bounce the brick up in horizontal areas. And then around the main entry to the building, we have a lot more brick because we get that value where people can see it, touch it, and feel it. We're also showing horizontal siding in different areas like this with the different color palettes to help diminish the scale of the building. And then we add accent siding up in these gable areas right here, again to add interest to those elements. What you see here are the exterior living spaces of each unit, and that happens on the corner units here, and then the inline units in this particular location. These are the townhome elevations that we're proposing. Again, 3 color palettes ranging from bold to vanilla to somewhere in between. And again, just work through the village here on landing on a palette that we're all interested in or willing to live with. Again, using the same type of materials and detailing that we had in the multifamily building, and using the same theories with using brick in vertical locations, again to provide that value and interest in the elevation. Horizontal siding of different colors to again differentiate and add some detail and interest to the elevations. And a little bit of roof bounce that we see along the front of this elevation to help diminish that long roof that you might see that might tend to add, be boring and add monotony to the elevation. The club, which we always feel in all of our communities, the club is the jewel of the project. It's where the residents come to socialize. It's a marketing tool in getting new residents to the community. Again, here we're showing the 3 different color palettes applied to our elevation. We're borrowing some of the detail and materials from the townhome and the multifamily buildings. Brick in different heights, horizontal siding, accent siding up in the gable, shed roofs at the main entry, a dormer up on the roof to help break down the mass of that roof. Here's the main building footprint of the multifamily building as it relates to the elevation. Each multifamily building. It has 32 units in it with 10 garages. We're offering 6 different unit types that range from approximately 700 square feet up to about 1,200 square feet. The main entry here in the middle, you come in through an airlock or vestibule into a lobby, access to the elevator. We have the sprinkler room here. Trash is centrally located in the building. From here, a resident can take the elevator up to the 2nd or 3rd floor or come down and access their units down the common corridor. A resident in this particular building doesn't have to rent a garage. They don't have that extra charge of having a garage on their rent. They could rent 1 or they could rent 2 if need be, with this common access off the corridor. As we go up to the 2nd floor, we arrive at this particular location, 2nd and 3rd floor, and then we can access our units down a common corridor. We have stair towers in the back that in most cases will access the green space that we see throughout the site. What's sort of unique about this is we go down to the end of the building, we utilize these corner entries into Unit D and Unit E. So as you come into this entry, you get a nice view out through the unit that helps add to size or makes that unit live much larger. So our 2 largest units tend to be on the corner in what we refer to as premium locations. Something that we haven't done before, and I think it's kind of unique to this project, is this particular unit right here in the middle. Because of the vestibule and the lobby in the center of the building, what we're able to do on the 2nd and 3rd floor is capture that space and create a unique unit that's a 1 plus a den. A 1-bedroom unit, and then you can come here and have a den that's really sort of a flex room that can be used for a home office or a TV room or a variety of things for this particular unit. A question came up in the memorandum of the city is really the size of the units. What we're showing here is a typical 1-bedroom unit, or it's actually our 2nd 1-bedroom unit in the project. It's approximately 767 square feet. And of all the projects that we've been working on lately, that's really about average of a 1-bedroom unit. And it still lives nice, it lives large. When you come into the unit, you get some nice through views through the sliding glass door out to the balcony. And because of utilizing like a stacked washer and dryer and flat screen TVs, those things are compact and much smaller now, so it helps add to the floor space that you see. But there's still a lot of features that you see in this 1-bedroom unit. You get a walk-in closet in the bedroom. You get private access from the bedroom into the bath, so it's almost like a private master suite. You've got an island here that can double as an eating bar. So really, this whole space lives large, and it doesn't live like 770 square feet. This is the corner D unit that's on the front of the buildings. As we talked about earlier, you come into the entry here, you get through views back out through the unit. We've got a split bedroom scenario here where we can turn left and walk down to the master suite that has access to the master bath. We can come over here and walk down a private hallway to bedroom 2, which could also act as a 2nd master suite in a roommate situation. Up front here is the laundry with our stackable washer dryer. Private hall bath for guests as we come in. Kitchen with an island that lives toward our living room area. A TV wall and furniture arrangement on this corner, and then access to the outdoor balcony. All units have an outdoor living space. We think that's very important for these units because people spend a lot of time out there, and it's a great feature for all of our units. Here's how the floor plan relates to the elevation on the townhome units. Throughout the site, we have, I believe it's 5 and 6 unit buildings. What you're seeing here is a 5-unit building. We have 2 unit types in this series, and they range from, I think it's around 1,490 square feet up to about 1,800 square feet. All these units have 2-car garages. They live like townhomes that we see and for sale townhomes that we see throughout the the suburbs in Chicago. Talking about the program, if you remember, the multifamily building had units that were around 700 square feet that went up to 1,200 square feet, and now we're picking up a whole nother market that starts at around 1,480 and goes up to 1,800 square feet. So we're offering a wide range of lifestyles, so to speak, in the community. And that's one thing that we're seeing in our other communities around the country is we call it sort of campus style. It's not just one building type that are being offered in these communities. They're coming in and looking at 2, possibly even 3 different lifestyles. So here we're providing 2. We're providing these townhomes as well as the common corridor building. But as you see here, each unit has its own front door, private door, not a common corridor situation, and its own 2-car garage in the back. Here's a typical, this is actually the end unit. From the front door, we come into a landing, we come up to a stair to a large living dining area. In the back, there's a big kitchen breakfast area. From here, we access and go upstairs to a 3-bedroom, almost like a for sale townhome unit. They really live nice. This would be for, say, a market where maybe an executive has moved to the area and he wants to come in, but he's not ready to buy a house, but he doesn't want to live in a 1-bedroom or whatever, so he may rent this townhome unit, so it's very similar to the single-family home that he left. And then the jewel of the project, as I said earlier, is a 6,000 square foot club. Main entry right here in the middle to a great room. Off to the right side of the plan is the management services, the leasing area, maintenance, record keeping. As we come in, we get through views back to the pool area, sort of an outdoor seating area around a fireplace. And down to the left side from the great room is our fitness room that has 24-hour or late access from this door. Can be locked off so that they don't get into the rest of the building, but residents can come in and work out at later times of the day. What's kind of fun about this fitness room is that we have 3 sides of glass. So as we're in there, we can have views out to the pool or come out onto sort of this private outdoor patio area and do some stretching or yoga, or then just have some more daylight on the back wall that faces to the north. But again, as we look at the elevation, we're picking up a lot of those features that we saw in the other building. A mix of materials, a mix of color, and similar gable detailing. And with that, I'll turn it over to, I believe, Tim for traffic. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Tim Doran. I'm with Gawalt Hamilton Associates, 850 Forest Edge Drive in Vernon Hills. You know the site area, but it probably would behoove us to just take a walk around it if we could for a second. And I'm not getting this to settle down, maybe. There we go. Okay, so this is the site. It's US 45, which is a 3-lane cross-section, a single lane in each direction with a turn lane or a median, a striped median in the middle. And immediately to the northwest of the site is Corporate Woods Parkway, which leads into the Corporate Woods Park. But more important from a traffic perspective, that roadway leads around to a signalized intersection with Milwaukee Avenue. That was a important aspect in our traffic study, that maybe people entering or exiting our site would use that. So that had to be a consideration. The Illinois Department of Transportation does have a phase 1 study underway to widen US 45. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, to a 5-lane section, 2 lanes in each direction, which will help greatly, because as you know, in the evening, the backups are significant from Fairway Drive back past the site and the new improvements. The bad news is it's not funded. It's only a matter of money. So that's what everybody says. We did a major traffic analysis. I did 4 studies. I did a signal warrant study at our location, not warranted. Signal warrant study at Corporate Woods Parkway is warranted, but there was a second follow-up study of that. A gap study from our site drive at Writers Court, a gap study seeing how people could get in and out during busy traffic times, and we also did a full traffic impact study. All of these have been vetted and presented to Dave Brown, your engineer. Met with him on 2 occasions, and we also met with the Illinois Department of Transportation with George Gutterly and Dave and I. And we also met with your traffic engineers, Civil Tech, to go through the study. Bottom line is, making a long story very short, traffic signals were not a good idea for a number of reasons. Not with a single lane in each direction. It wouldn't help our site. It wouldn't help Corporate Woods that much, but it certainly wouldn't help people in and out of here. The bottom line of our study, and then I can work backwards from there, is compared to your approved PUD, we are significantly less traffic, number one. And if I may cite that for the record, we are 33% of the traffic in the morning and 41% of the traffic in the evening. Our site traffic is 33% in the morning and 41% in the evening of the approved PUD. But perhaps even more important is that we're the good movements. So we're outbound in the morning and inbound at night. So if somebody was coming from the northwest and wanted to go into our site coming home at night when traffic is at its worst, there is a turn lane, they sit there. And yes, traffic does back up past our site, so they have to rely on what my favorite term in traffic engineering, a courtesy gap. But people do give them. And if traffic's backed up there, at least people are storing in a lane. Where the old site was trying to squeeze out during the rush hour, we're going in during the rush hour. That's a big thing. I talked about the roadway improvements. I have one additional that Scott mentioned briefly. We have some good news, and this was an idea that we all discussed with Dave Brown, and the owner is now under contract to purchase the property, which gives us, and I don't think there's a site plan here that I could go to real quickly, which gives us access directly to the east, past my office building, over to Forest Edge Drive, which gives all kinds of new alternatives for people that want to go north of Milwaukee Avenue, people that just want to do other things. We projected in our study that about 20% of the people would do this and up here. Not quite 20%, it was about 18% of the people would do that. To go north of Milwaukee Avenue, which was a logical choice. They can now do this over through Corporate Woods and then up to the signal by the health club at Corporate Woods. You know, in traffic, from a network perspective, more is always better than less. So the more opportunities you give to people to move around the area and the region, the better off you are. So I think it's a great improvement. That concludes my talk. Is it going to be Warren or it's going to be Steve Spinell is next?
Good evening. Thank you. Community benefits. It's a pleasure to be in front of you, to be able to finally in my career to be able to be a part of a opportunity to create some high-end housing within the community that I've been and raised my family within the last 20 plus years. Yes. Sure. We think that this housing will help create a strong balance of housing within the community. And we understand that there will be a $1.1 million benefit to the Park District, and of which no benefit would be to on the contribution side if it was for its original intended use. A bunch of $6 to $8 million of disposable income, which would benefit our community as well as increase in property taxes with limited impact to the schools throughout our community. And again, touching on the high quality of design, construction, management, and the amenities that could add a significant value to our community as we continue to grow. At that point, now we're more than happy to answer any questions you may have of our team here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
You showed a layout of the 700, one of the smaller units. You also have a unit that's smaller than that. You wouldn't happen to have that as well?
The plans for all of the units are
Well,
in your
I know I have
packet.
it in the plan, but
I don't
you had
have it on the screen.
sort of like a picture of
Let me see
what
if
a
I can.
real
Yep,
setting looks like.
sure. Unit A, which is located on the second and third floors on the front of the building, occurs in two locations, left side, right side. And as you could, I'm not sure if you, it's not a very large image here, but you can see it contains many of the same elements that Joe already described. You walk in, you've got actually a rather large kitchen for a unit of this size with a breakfast bar, built-in dishwasher, double bowl sink, range, and refrigerator. Again, nice ample size. You also have a guest access to the one bedroom, or excuse me, one bathroom, and you've got an entry into the bedroom. The bedroom also has a view across the balcony. The access to the balcony is from the main living space in the corner, and you have not a large, but you still have a walk-in closet, and across from it, a stacked washer and dryer. So again, it's more compact living, but it has all the same features of its larger, slightly larger brethren, the B unit.
Is that an eating bar that you have then?
It is an eating bar, yes.
And what
And-
is what is
I'm
the
sorry.
square out by the balcony that has an X in it?
Each of the units is heated and cooled independently. So everybody has gas forced air heat, and the product is called a Magic Pack. It consolidates both of those items in a designated closet, and the air conditioner unit, which is part of it, vents out a grill. We've got it hidden behind the balcony railing. That is then ducted. You can see the dashed lines on these plans. That heated air or cooled air, conditioned air, is then ducted into the other portions of the unit, the bedroom and the kitchen spaces. Bedroom, kitchen, bath. So you
And
can see it.
And the drainage for the air conditioner, does that,
Say again, please.
how's the drainage from the air conditioner?
There's plumbing going into those spaces as well.
And you said how many of these in each unit, each building?
There are
Four?
4 in each building, 2 on the second floor, 2 on the third floor. A very similar floor plan in the F unit, but again, we've incorporated the additional space over the entry area, the entry lobby, and incorporated that into the F, providing some additional living space.
And does that lead out to a balcony also? That
Yes, you
additional
can
area?
see here on the other side of the F, got a balcony here. This does not. This line here is reflective of the entry porte cochere. So that is not accessible. Here on the F units, these are only windows on the second and third floors of the building.
Right. So which side of the building am I looking at above?
That's the rear elevation. I could go to the front elevation, and here you would see the windows of the F unit above.
That's what was.
And these, yeah, sorry, I'm confusing, yeah. This is the rear elevation, so you can see how the B units relate to the rear, and this is the front elevation, so you've got the garages on the first floor, and on the second floor, you've got the F units, and you've got the A units here and here. Making more sense now?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
I think it's great that you were able to acquire that eastern access. It makes a tremendous difference.
We agree. Saves a lot of trees and preserves the green space on 45, and obviously provides residents a more direct path to Lifetime, which we think will be a very nice amenity.
Do you anticipate doing anything with that traffic circle in there as a part of that? Adjusting it, making it smaller?
We'll certainly consider it. You know, obviously, we were trying to design in that flexibility, the roundabout or a cul-de-sac, so Now that we have the property under contract, we will revisit
Right.
that.
Maybe there's some possibilities to preserve some more trees or create some more buffer area for, from the road and for the people across the street and those types of things.
Yes.
I think I had a question about that one as well, and my question was regarding the parking off of that roundabout. So if I'd be the guy that backs out into somebody coming in onto the site, screaming onto the site. So those perpendicular parking spaces off of the roundabout.
They can definitely be eliminated. Per John's recommendation, suggestion, we studied the individual areas of pods, if you will, within the community. And the southern pod here is parked at upwards of 6.5 cars per unit, which is
Nice.
almost triple the required 2.3. So I do think we could eliminate those without any difficulty.
Thank you.
John, I don't know that there's a great deal of traffic on Forest Edge Drive, but do we have any concerns about people exiting from the business park into this development?
Well, maybe the developer can speak to how that access road is going to be regulated.
Given that it's so recent, the contract and our ability actually to think openly, we've given it some consideration. We will work with staff. We would consider gating it or limiting some access, but again, we're flexible. We would consider meandering the road a little bit now that we have a little more room to work with. Definitely, we don't want it to become a speedway by any stretch. We want to obviously slow down the traffic, calm it. The fact that it is a circuitous route, I think some people that are back there in the office park, they might take the opportunity. But again, they can always exit right there at Woodlands Drive onto 45, just the same as here. I think it's going to be utilized much more so by our residents that wish to go to the east or southeast or northeast and to get to Lifetime.
Yeah, I don't notice a whole lot of people coming out of that.
You may
at
actually,
45.
you may actually have employees from the park living in this development adjacent to it,
Right.
so hopefully they would walk or ride their bike, but
There was a comment about the fire department wanting so much clearance on the turns. Are you able to accommodate all those?
We have vetted the site for vehicle access for the fire department.
Now this, you're proposing private roads throughout the development. Does that include this new access?
It does, yes. We would contemplate maintaining the roads, keeping them private, but building them to the village's public standards.
What do most of the developments have as far as ratio of private versus public, as far
well,
as
in
multifamily type development?
multifamily apartments are privately owned, AMLI, the places within the TIF district, which are condo that have gone apartments, so they're privately owned. We do have some private streets on within developments that have individual owner-occupied units, but they're very far and few between, primarily up in NCT. And actually, back in the late 80s, I believe there was a call by those residents to make those roads public. So a portion of those were taken public after going through a process. But in terms of, for a product like this, they are typically private.
And do we need to put in some contingency about if this was ever converted from a rental type property to an ownership type property, that the roads would be brought up to standard?
Well, and that's a very good point. I mean, what we're requiring is that they build into village standards anyway. So
Right, initially.
Whenever they or whomever decides to do improvements within the development, or repairing the roads or doing overlays or at some point in the long-term future, possible reconstruction, they have to get our approval.
But isn't that deceiving? Is that they're village standards in terms of construction, but not curb to curb width? So aren't these narrower than a typical village road?
Some of the driveways are, yes, absolutely. I don't,
What about the collector, which is essentially the north-south street?
that's a good question. Let me look at the plan real quick, unless, Warren, you can answer it off the top of your head. Where's the guy from Gewalt, or Cowie?
Back roadway width,
Right.
28, 27.
So we're short.
No, we're actually right on with regards to residential roads. I mean, we're not building this as a huge,
No.
huge street, but it is consistent. The internal circulation roads, they are shy. They're narrow. A part of that, I think, is intentional because of the desire to preserve green space.
Yeah.
Part of it also is intentional to slow people down.
While he's looking, there was another comment that you made, John, I think, regarding the parking situation up in I forget which
Pod B.
number you call it.
B.
B? Yeah, Pod B.
Right. I might want to ask the developer to address that, because we've had several conversations.
Yeah, I'm getting my notes.
Seems like you have a great deal for A. Not so much for Pod B, for the number of units.
We've done an extensive analysis of the parking that's been provided. Pods A and Pods E relate to the row homes that are in the northwest and southeast corners. The number of spaces per unit to the north is 5.2, to the south is 6.5, way over the 2.3. That's principally because we have two-car parking in the garages, 2 cars on the apron, plus dedicated guest spaces. That drives those numbers up. Pods B and D are the multifamily buildings. The 5 buildings to the north are Pod B, and the 3 buildings to the south are Pod D. It really depends upon how you aggregate the spaces around it, where you allocate them. Pod D is providing 1.94 spaces per unit, which is, given that there are 30 garage spaces, 30 apron spaces, 126 surface spaces for a total of 186, serving 96 units. Of those 96 units, let's see, there are 66 that are one bedroom. So,
Go through the numbers again, because they're different from what's in my report.
and again, it's how you aggregate them. I can show you on Pod B. The report shows up to 2.3 spaces. These spaces that are in front of the row homes, if you include those with this pod, you're up to the 2.3 spaces per unit. If you exclude those that are on the south side, you're back down at the 1.9. So again, it just depends upon where people are going to park, where they choose to park, closest to the building. There is ample parking in the south end. I think the focus is on Pod B, where we have 271 spaces. Now, the difference in the numbers depends upon whether or not you include the spaces in front of the clubhouse. There are 21 spaces in front of the clubhouse. They will not all be occupied by people visiting the clubhouse. Whether you allocate them to the north or to the south is somewhat arbitrary. If you exclude all of those, we're back at 260 spaces here. If you include 11, we get up to 271. You include 15, we're up to 275, 276. The point is that there are multiple places to park within the community. Evaluating the individual buildings, really where we're probably the tightest of any is right here next to the clubhouse with Building 4 and perhaps Building 5. But Building 4 can also come around here and park in these spaces. They're going to obviously come in the back door. They're going to come down here, and they're going to park in front of the clubhouse. In a prior plan, we had additional perpendicular spaces on the west side of the main drag. There's also room for perpendicular spaces on the east side. It's our desire to preserve that green space and not have perpendicular spaces backing out onto the main drag. So, yeah, we're a little tight there, but when you consider that there are 22 one-bedrooms and there are 10 garages and 10 garage spaces, 10 of those unit owners, they're taken care of. That leaves 22 spaces to deal with. We have 10 spaces in front, excuse me, let me verify my numbers here. We have 10 spaces in front of the building. We have 11 spaces, let me get my arrow, 11 spaces down here. We have 17 spaces here. So 10, 11, 17, 38 spaces. Now, will they be borrowing spaces from this building? Sure. There's lots more parking up here, and then there's more parking up here. There's ample room. We've got ample space. We can make adjustments if this commission feels appropriate. Again, it's a trade-off between green space versus asphalt.
Are you going to have any designated guest parking?
All of these would be available to guests. The only dedicated spaces are those aprons. So anybody is able to park. There will be obviously handicap spaces reserved at specific locations per code.
I guess from the staff standpoint, and Warren and I and Matt have had several discussions with regards to Pod B. So he's absolutely right. It's a trade-off, additional parking versus some loss of green space and the like, and seeing how that can be done, I think, is important. I understand what he's saying, and however, our experiences have shown, and I speak specifically as the judge for the village who adjudicates non-moving violations, a lot of the communities where we do enforcement have parking issues because they are substantially less than the 2 spaces per unit. And going to Jerry's question about visitor parking, there's no need for visitor parking here because if there is visitor parking, the residents are going to use it themselves. So, which is another thing that we see here. So we just feel like this number needs to come up because while there are a couple pods that are overparked or have additional spaces, it's not likely that somebody who lives in some of these northern units are going to want to walk a long distance from their car to their unit. And again, we've had these discussions, and I think there's some, looking at some of the site plan and some of what we see here, there is some ability to obtain some additional spaces, and I think that number can come up without necessarily significantly impacting the open space that's provided here. It's just, I think we need to spend some time and put a pencil to tracing paper, so to speak, in the engineering or the landscaping vernacular, as they say. So, but I think it's doable. It's just, we think that there needs to be additional spaces.
There's plenty of room, and we're happy to work with staff to find additional spaces.
Anybody else? Can I ask you a couple of unconnected questions? On the building we're looking at here, which are you affectionately refer to as the flats, which is the front?
You're looking at the front elevation right now. So the front has the main entrance at the center. It's flanked by 5 garages on either side. Obviously, the scale of the building is such that the proportion of the garages are diminished because of the 3-story and the overall length of the building. So that front occurs here. We've tried to screen that front with these landscape islands, pulling the narrower drive aisles, slowing people down, allowing them to pull into the garage spaces. So the front of the building per se, here, 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 and then we reverse it. So now that the rear of the building is these rears are looking out on the green space, these guys are looking out over the pond. So the more desirable unit locations, the larger units have the better views. The smaller units have the lesser views.
Because to some extent in the PowerPoint, everything kind of fades together.
Yeah.
What really are these garage doors in terms of color?
Well, we've now shown them to match the lighter of the siding colors. And, to address the colors, it's so hard to see in a computer rendering or even a printed version. Our suggestion, if we get a theme, be it the greens or the creams or the red or the tan brick, we would construct a larger sample board nearby the village, somewhere near here where people could see it in natural daylight,
Right.
larger samples, something that you can make a more rational judgment.
Okay, the reason I ask is, what was handed out today, this color scheme C1,
Yep.
there the garage doors are anything but faded into the building. They look to be a substantially lighter, different color. And I know a lot of this is the phenomenon of printing and all that. So hence my question.
Yeah.
It's the rule. You have to speak at a microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt Nix, that was the initial package, or the last package had C,
Yes.
and BSB actually responded to the comment that we heard last time to see if we could blend the garage doors. So that supplemental C1, the only change there is the blending of the garage doors.
Okay, that's one question.
So-
No,
Yep.
Yeah, C1. C1 has the blended garage doors. C versus C1, and then we
but
have,
not C1 on the.
and then we
big
have
building.
D1.
That's the lighter one of mine. Yeah, that's like, okay. My other question, which is unconnected, is there's a staff comment regarding the tree location survey. And you indicated earlier, or someone did, that 220 trees were removed because of their condition. Fair enough. 290 were removed because of construction. And I assume because you phrased it that way, but for construction, they wouldn't have a condition problem. How many are you replacing of that 290?
Scott, you got to say that.
The number of replacements is 510.
Are those trees or are those landscape items?
Those are trees only. They represent deciduous shade trees,
Okay.
specimen ornamental trees, and evergreen trees in aggregate.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. My next unconnected question is.
Could I follow up on your
Sure,
question?
yeah.
I'm sorry, did you say you were adding 510? You were adding 510?
510 trees.
And it's throughout the site.
Throughout the site, yes.
My next question is, which now I've volunteered, is the page. On your traffic study, you have an intersection capacity analysis, and specifically I'm interested in the part that is labeled US 45 and Riders Court site access. The, okay, is Exhibit 11, as it's pointed out to
Yeah,
me?
if you could give me a second, let me turn to the study. People rarely look at those tables. Good for you. I look at
Sorry.
them and get a migraine sometimes. All right, I'll be
The
right
curse of
with
being
you.
a lawyer.
No, they're important, believe me, they're important to IDOT and they're important to your engineers.
It's like almost to the end, it's like
Yeah,
3
it's
pages.
Exhibit 6, I think. right?
11.
Exhibit 11 in our report? Okay. 11 is there. Got it.
Okay. Number 2 says US 45 and Riders Court site access.
Yep,
Okay? I'm really looking at the far right column.
yes,
For all, probably to be charitable, the level of service at that intersection is from bad to worse,
yeah.
pretty much. How do you reconcile that with what we've been discussing here? I know you said it's 33% less than the other use,
Yeah.
but 2 comments. One, well, 33% less still results, it looks like, in bad or worse. And 2, at the expense of sounding provincial, this is of residents versus someone who's coming or going to work. And we get more of our complaints from residents than someone who works at a place. So how do we reconcile this level of service with placing this development that hopefully would be successful on this street with, maybe in our lifetimes, we'll get the 4 lanes?
Sure. Just, if I may, just to set the table, so to speak, we're about 150 outbound cars in the morning and about 190, I believe, inbound at night. There's some outbound at night too and some inbound in the morning.
Sure.
Which is about 33% of what the approved PD, and just logically, intuitively, everybody knows, office is inbound in the morning and outbound at the worst time. We're outbound at the in the morning, and we're inbound at the worst time. So that's good. So those levels of service on the minor delay, on the minor approach is our driveway.
Right.
And Ryder Court. Those are the minor approaches. 45 is the way. So in 2020, even when they add through lanes in 2020, when they make it a 5-lane section, we hope that's by 2020, it's a level of service D.
Yes.
Acceptable for design standards. Not optimal. C is optimal. A is great. B is good. C is decent. D is minimally acceptable design standards.
Okay, but what
There's
about?
nothing else we can do about it.
Oh, I
I'll
understand.
be honest with you.
And trust me, I go out onto 45, I understand.
Now,
Go on.
I may say, and this is a hard thing to model, remember I mentioned earlier in my presentation that we had projected somewhere around 20% of the people leaving would go to the northwest and then go down Corporate Woods Parkway and exit the signal. We now think that a good chunk of those may take the new east-west access over to Forest Edge Drive.
Okay.
That gets that stuff, cars, out of that intersection.
Okay, but that raises a different question. I do know you said that, but someone else, and I did not write down whom, so I apologize, when we were talking about access through the site from the Corporate Woods, that they wouldn't do that, but it's very circuitous to start taking these trips. If it's circuitous for someone who works there, why isn't it equally circuitous for someone who lives there and, as we've pointed out, is not necessarily a longtime resident? So why do we think that they're going to have that heavy of use to try to wind their way through essentially a business park?
I think if I'm thinking correctly what you're saying, I don't think that east-west connection is going to collect a lot of people from the outside. If you live there and you want to go north on Milwaukee Avenue, or even if you want to go south on Milwaukee Avenue, you may choose, depending on what pod you live in, to just take that easy east-west access over to Forest Edge Drive, down around and down either out onto 45 or north to there's another signal there. So I think that roadway, and believe me, we've had a lot of discussions in our office because it's next to my office.
Right.
Literally next to our
I know.
offices. And we feel that it will be mostly people in this development that will use it. From the outside, it won't be a convenient cut-through, in my opinion. It will not be a convenient cut-through. But it would be, from this development, a nice way to get out if you want to go north.
Okay, did you do and I do not remember, did you do the traffic study for, now I'm drawing a blank, at the metro station lot?
I did not.
Okay. There's a connection from the adjoining subdivision. And when that traffic study was done, those of us who are on the commission, we were told people will not go to the adjoining subdivision, but loads of people will find the light is so wonderful that they will go there. I'm not quite sure that's true. So why will it be true here?
Again, if I may just say, and can we put the entire site plan up here? I think logically, once we get the entire site plan up, there we go.
No, this one?
Yeah, no, go back
Yeah, I
to
was
the
gonna
aerial.
say,
The aerial's
the
better.
aerial's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think logically, it's, if you're living in this site and you have a connection over here to Forest Edge Drive, I mean, first of all, you know it's there.
Sure.
Okay, because you're coming and you're moving around the site every day, so you know it's there. So you can take this up to that signal. You can still come down here, and if you want to go north on Milwaukee Avenue, you can go over to Corporate Woods Drive and take that north to that signal. It just gives you better options. So your question specifically was, why do you think a signal is such a big attraction? That's just best practices, and we know it's for people that want to go to places and they want to get out and intersect major roadways very carefully. Traffic signals work better than uncontrolled intersections.
Yes.
Okay. But the most convenient, which is by your office again, if you go out that so-called side door to get back to Route 45, it's to a non-signalized intersection, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's signalized. You go up through
No,
Forest Edge
to
Drive.
Milwaukee's
Yeah.
signal.
Milwaukee's signalized.
no,
You go up
40
here and then
45.
Milwaukee Avenue.
No, to
45 is unsignalized.
They probably
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. They'd go to Milwaukee.
It's a little further east, and I exit there at night, at 5, 6 o'clock at night, and let me put it this way, I'm not as bothered at that intersection as if I was further west.
Okay.
Because the backups come there sometimes, but not quite as many.
Okay. Without giving us because the hour is late, a specific, thesis on the peak hour gap study,
Sure.
what are you trying to demonstrate for us in Exhibit 12?
There's a standard, American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials standard for outbound gaps. It's 6.8 seconds. to be able to leave, perceive a car coming in either direction, leave, step on the accelerator, make it. That's, I don't know what formula, what professor made that formula up, but it's just under 7 seconds. So we go out and we do the gap study. We actually have a person there who holds a button down during gaps, lets it up during non-gaps, and it projects a big spreadsheet, and it shows how many gaps within an hour. There's a standard for a number of gaps in an hour. I think we said in the evening there was 25 gaps, which you'd say intuitively it's a gap, like every 2 minutes. But there was also longer gaps. 10 seconds allows 2 cars to go out. So these are standards. And so when we did that, we said, well, we came up with this thing that said, not this thing, this standard that said, this evaluation that said there's adequate gaps. However, we all know what happens there when trains come through. There's not. So let's be honest. There's times there's not. But that's an hour during the day.
Okay, so my question then really is,
And if I may add, again, we're inbound at night. Most of us are inbound at night, not outbound.
when you look at Exhibit 12, if we talk specifically about the left out of the site onto Route 45, is the left out on the site that you're looking at a left out that would say you cross the one lane of traffic, stop and stack on whatever the painted median or turn lane is there, and wait and hope that you can get in?
The answer is yes, it could happen. That's not contemplated in the gap study. The
Okay, that's
gap
my
study
question.
does not contemplate that. Now, there is a way to model that, where it's a two-stage gap. It's usually done on four-lane highways.
Okay, that's really my
Where there's a median in the middle, where a four-lane highway, where you're
Right.
crossing two lanes, you stop in the middle, and then wait for that. It wasn't contemplated.
But that's
in
not
this
what
gap
you,
study.
that's not what you determined. You also, is it also true, so I understand this, that you did also not look at this, that you would right out of the site during peak hours and essentially be able to double back then at another light or
Oh,
another
do a
intersection?
U-turn? Well, you
Yes.
can't do it for a long time. because
Why not?
There's no fourth leg at Corporate Woods, so you'd have to,
You have to go to the
I
train
suppose they
station.
could pull in there, turn around and take yeah, someone will do it.
Okay, but you didn't, that was also
No.
not something you
No.
determined?
No.
Okay. If and when Route 45 is ever actually more than a dream, it's actually a reality, my understanding is, and we're going to confirm with you, is that it is not to be a median, it's just a painted median on
Yes.
the? Okay.
That's my understanding also, that it would be 5 lanes with the median exists today, and that will continue to exist in the future. Now, I would defer to maybe Bob on that, but who's ever more akin to looking what the design was. We know it's a 5-lane section. Whether or not there'll be, I don't know of any plans to put what we call a barrier median up. Now, there may be a mountable median that you could drive on, we call them corrugated, they have
Right.
rumble strips on them, and then they transition down to the turn lane. That could happen.
It's not planned to be a consistent, long barrier median. There are some medians that are planned for that
For
road,
that stretch between
Right.
Port Clinton all the way to Route 60.
but not one continuous.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you know what's planned in front of your site?
I don't. Well, my discussions, our preliminary discussions with IDOT, it's just paint. That's
Okay,
it. It's
fair enough.
paint,
Okay.
which is very similar to what it is today.
And as far as you know, is the speed changing at all on the road?
I don't know that. I don't know if they're changing the speed limit.
Okay. that's fair
Actually,
enough.
at the IDOT meetings, the preliminary numbers were 40, 45 max that they had in their preliminary discussions, so actually it's probably gonna come down.
Because right now
I think that
right.
stretch is 50 right now.
It is right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
it's
typically
about-
lower it when
And
they're
now,
loading.
and from what I heard, they were gonna lower it,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Fair enough. Is there any, which is Exhibit 8, the site primary access, because the right-in, right-out would go away, is aligned with Writers Court?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Writers
correct.
Court does have some, obviously, in and out movement also at the same peak hours.
Yes.
Did you do anything looking at the impact or the conflicts between, for lack of better words, your neighbor to the south?
Yeah, geometrically, our left ends would not conflict with their left ends because the
Right.
intersection would be designed so the facing vehicles would have the appropriate radius, so and there's a standard for that, and that's how the highway will be
Right.
designed. Our right ends, obviously, our
Right.
right outs won't. Our left outs, and the same standard applies for our left turns out versus their left turn out. There is a standard radius for that design of that intersection that separates those vehicles. And that's a design, that's an IDOT standard, an AASHTO standard, as
Okay,
we say.
so those are aligned in such a way that you can
They
accommodate?
will be, yes, in the
Okay.
future. Yep, that I can guarantee.
Okay, all right. I think those are my disconnected questions.
Now, the one thing that
Yes.
we didn't consider is with this new access to the east, and if they go out on Forest Edge, or I guess it's not Forest, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Forest Edge is just a
Forest
little
Edge.
circle
It's
there,
Forest
then
Edge,
it runs into something
Forest
else.
Forest Edge to Woodlands.
To
Yeah,
Woodlands.
Woodlands runs out to Milwaukee.
Yep.
If they make a right-hand turn there, you've upset more Georgetown people, because they won't be able to get out again.
When you look at the traffic, though, from Lifetime that goes out continuously, I think these few residents are going to make minimal impact
Oh, I
turning
agree.
right onto Milwaukee. That's my opinion.
I agree.
Because I belong to Lifetime, and there's a ton of
The
volume
health club
there.
came in, that significantly.
That would be huge.
Increased on
Yeah.
Woodlands, there's no doubt about it. But if 20%, and let's just use that as a model, 20% of the people that left in the morning wanted to go that way and then make a right on Milwaukee, we're 150 out in the morning, that's 30 cars. Some of them go to the west, so let's say 10 or 15 of them go to the east, of which another percentage, 5 or 10 cars. That's
I just think
probably-
Lifetime has a bigger impact
No doubt
going
about
out
it.
onto Milwaukee
No
in
doubt
either
about it.
direction, yeah.
Yeah,
But I see
Lifetime's
your
a busy
point.
place.
Why do you, where did you come up with 150?
That's the standard, it's right out of the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
And based on,
It's peak 1 hour. Peak 1 hour in the morning.
for how many residents?
For the number of 304 residents, and there's a standard, it's in the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
less than
Trip
half?
generation manual
Less than half of the people
would leave in the
go
morning.
to work
In
during
the
rush
peak
hour?
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
And that's not
Yeah.
less than half, that's probably a quarter, because you could have 2 people in each apartment, theoretically.
You could, but that is a standard, let me, if I may say this, the Institute of Transportation, that's probably 25 or 30, because this land use, which is low-rise, multifamily, is a very popular land use. There's some, like movie theaters and so on, they don't have, off the top of my head, probably have 30 or 40 surveys that they've done in all types, and they're all suburban, not urban. That's also a problem when you work in the city. That's mostly, it's all suburban samples, that they've surveyed other developments of this time
Great.
over and over and over again. And the answer is yes. I mean, if you looked at all of us and asked what time we leave for work in the morning, I'll guarantee you, most of it will be different. There'll be different hours for everybody. Everybody.
Okay. Although we have more, very likely, additional questions for all of you, I will say, because this is a public hearing also, and we do have some people. What we'll do first is note that notices were sent out to the adjoining
Yes.
world. Do we get any written responses?
No, sir.
Okay, so we have no written responses, but if anyone from the public, for purposes of commenting on this particular issue before the commission tonight, wants to speak, this would be your opportunity to do so. Yes, but we said the only rule is you have to speak in a microphone, otherwise no one can hear you. And then we'd ask you who you are.
I am Mark Raybach. I live at 1057 Sanctuary Court. Appreciate all the work you guys have done. I hope you can hear me better than I could hear you guys. It was very, very difficult. I'm not sure if these mics are up or not. I understood that this was a meeting that was going to address zoning changes. Has that already been a foregone conclusion?
No.
So there have been other meetings in advance of this where they have presented this option for a development for this area.
Not formally in terms of a public hearing, just as a concept.
Okay.
But this evening, we're being asked to also look at this use and changing the zoning classification from office research and development to R7 multifamily residential PUD.
I understand that there is also, as part of this zoning, that in addition to the rental properties, that there's potentially zoning for a bank and other commercial operations, restaurants. Is that something that they have land, that they would be adding that as a future phase? of this?
No, if you look at the aerial up above, and if you look at that triangle piece there, just to the left of site,
Yes.
that's generally the small triangular piece of property that would be rezoned to B1, which is the commercial.
So that is part of this discussion tonight as
Yes.
well?
Yes. Yep.
And they'd be developing that too?
Potentially, yes.
So that land, which is right as the in and out access, is not going to be part of the green space?
Correct.
And when would this development start, in your guys' opinion?
It's a question for the developer.
If you were to get your zoning?
But before he answers
variance.
that, are you talking about for the commercial aspect or everything?
As this would be zoned, they can start doing any development that they want. When would you plan on starting your work?
Our plans, if successfully rezoned, would be to start land development in the spring. We have no users for the parcel on the left of the entrance, to the northwest. The small triangular piece, that is not slated for development. Any future development plans would by necessity have to come back before this body. As far as the multifamily plans, yes, we would proceed forthwith as soon as we're able.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. What are the other PUDs that are being considered under the zoning that exists now?
For this site or
Yes.
general?
Well, there's no other PUD being considered other than what you're seeing tonight.
So the village wants to have this be zoned for something where somebody would build on it now? Is that in the village's?
No, this is a
Interest.
request by the developer to have this commission consider their PUD request, their rezoning request, everything associated with that.
So does this feel like a good project to the village?
Well, I think that's why we're here tonight.
We haven't voted on it yet,
Right.
so I can't speak for what people around me will say, but we're, for lack of a better word, we're obligated if a developer comes to us to at least listen.
Sure. So the point is that obviously this would benefit a lot of people potentially, and it may impact even more. And I'm glad that you are speaking to the impact on the traffic. I am very concerned about what you talk about, the left out. The left out is dramatically dangerous. There is an awful lot of traffic that is coming from your northwest and heading towards Milwaukee Avenue, and an equal amount of traffic that is heading northwest at the same time. So the that left out, I think needs to be really considered and viewed in person during the morning hours. It's very dangerous. You have trucks on there. You have a lot of cars that are in a hurry to get to the tollway spur, for instance. So I don't want you to underestimate the safety concerns that people that would be driving there would be facing. And that's a village issue. That really is the safety of the residents. And a lot of people are driving their kids to Stevenson and the other schools. There's a lot of buses that are stopping to pick up the kids in both Riders Court and at Sanctuary Point. So I want you to really consider that aspect dramatically before you allow this sort of concentrated residential-based project, to say nothing of a potential for a bank drive-in. You'd have even more people going in and out. And there isn't a whole lot of room to widen it to 5 lanes, 4 plus a center lane. The footprint there is very nominal as it exists. So I hope that will be highly considered. The property values of the people that own single-family homes along 45 have certainly seen a depreciation in value, and homeowners are concerned about a significant number of rental properties right there in our vicinity. May impact that even more over the next number of years. To say nothing of the quality of life that anybody who is commuting between Milwaukee Avenue and Fairway Drive will be forced to live with construction traffic for 2 years, maybe? Construction? So that's a significant impact. You know that when they were working on Route 22 3 or 4 years ago, they used that site to maintain the gravel and all the trucks that were bringing debris. And there was a great degradation of the roadway and a significant number of broken windshields and things like that with debris that was kicked up from the trucks. So I really hope that you guys will take some time out there yourselves and consider that safety aspect dramatically.
Okay.
So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else want to speak? Okay. Then hearing no one else, well, you get a chance. For purposes of the public hearing, excuse me, we'll close that portion of it. Are there any other questions on the commission's part?
Just, you brought it up a little earlier, so I might as well bring it up now. You brought about the colors.
Okay.
And I didn't really have a huge issue with the last time, but I know you and some others did. And one of the things I did want to commend the architect on was the change of the brick, going to the limestone versus the dark brick. One of the things that I looked at from your last ones was I kind of got that East Coast, Southeast Coast feel to it with the darker brick, and with the limestone, I thought that was a lot more Midwestern look to it, and thought that fit better. But if you guys don't want to go with the little bright colors, hopefully you can maybe settle on the dark greens in between, because the other palette's just way too pale. It's blah. So
I like the green, I like the initial green
Yeah,
palette
I didn't have any problem with the,
for the multiple,
multiple family
right.
coloration that they
You
had
had an
last
issue
time.
with the
It was just
primary color.
the townhome style that I had a problem with. And I think they've revised it well
In which one?
on the townhomes.
I know, but which concept are you?
I'm not sure I prefer one over, you mean C versus D?
Sure.
I don't think I have a preference. I just think either one of them is better than A.
See, they're trying to separate the two different styles of living, you know, the row houses versus the multiple.
Right, which is why I wanted to stay with the green on the others.
So you like the initial
Yeah,
color
like,
palette on that?
I didn't mind those.
Okay.
It's just the townhomes I didn't care for.
Okay.
There's too many colors going on. I do have a comment regarding the townhomes, though, on the elevation with the garages. I think it would add greatly to the appearance of those if you put shutters on the windows that aren't extended on the siding portion. If you could add shutters on the back of those units, that would greatly improve the appearance of that.
I didn't know if you want me to address this
Sure.
directly. Let's see if I have the rear. I don't think I have the rear elevation. I do know what you're talking about, and I think we'd be happy to add shutters to the rear elevation.
It's a long stretch of
Yep, I know.
siding.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little further.
Yeah.
I think, as far as your color examples, first of all, I like the initial option for the multiple family unit, number one. I do like, but I also like the option D that goes with it. So, I don't know if it's really the part of this commission to lock you down on which specific color for that unit, but both of those seem to work really well. You know, Jim's comments on that limestone color brick that's coming up into the elevation, both of them are very handsome, all right? So I think personally that both of those would work well.
See this, I think.
I also
Yeah,
think
this is
that new color palette with the light brick works extremely well in the row houses. It looks excellent for
Thank you.
those row houses. So, as an alternative, I do like the initial presentation of the row houses. I thought that was fun. I thought it's different. I thought it was something that you don't see all the time. And isn't that what every developer's trying to do, is create something that's new and different? So, as far as the goal for presenting something like that, I think there's value there for creating something that's new and different that somebody might want. But as far as creating something that's really handsome, I think that scheme, color scheme D for the row houses also works really, really well. And you don't see that everywhere either. That I drive all over the place and I have not seen that particular color palette really anywhere. So, well, those are my comments on that. As far as does anybody have any further comments on those?
You know, with respect to the apartment building, which is the one you went back to, I probably would like D the best, and the reason being is primarily, I agree with the comment regarding the use of the alternate material from just brick, but more importantly, because there are 10 garage doors that run along the front of that building, and that's why I asked which is the front. In that color scheme, for some reason, and maybe it's just to me, the garage seem to more disappear or blend
Less
into the
prominent.
building. Yes.
Less
Whereas the other ones, and I know part of it is a phenomenon of, you know, the PowerPoint and the colors and all those types of things, especially in the initial concept, they're really there, it seems to me. In C, not so much, but D, they seem to kind of disappear, and I found that appealing. With regard to the row houses, which is the other one, once again, I like the use of something other than brick, because it's the proverbial, you know, at one point in the northern suburbs, if you wanted to be upscale, you put brick, and that was just definition, then you were upscale. This, I think, is an interesting difference. It does still have the colors, so I probably between them, I probably like D the best, but, you know, would I be, turned off by C? No.
Come on, Hal, you know you really love A, or whatever you love the primaries. You're just not willing to up it out.
No, actually, I do not really mind the primaries. I just don't think I like the primaries in this application.
Okay.
With the different projections. But the other ones, I actually do. Okay, so you're saying something else then?
No, that's
I
good.
actually agree that I prefer D in both as well.
Okay.
I'd like to make another comment on the planning, on the small unit, the 625 or 695, whatever it is. It's an outstanding plan. For a small unit, it has everything. It lives a lot bigger than a lot of much larger apartments. So I think the planning on that one is really excellent.
Thank you.
People can always find ways to store material that they own. Heck, I don't know if it'd be acceptable for you guys, but, if you get somebody with a little money, then they could just buy a couple different garages and they could store it in there, never open them. But as far as the units planning is concerned, I think the smaller units, even though we look upon square footage as turf, on how much we can have or how much works for us, I really think that if you've ever lived in the city or if you've ever seen a lot of smaller apartments, there's a lot of really great ways to organize smaller spaces, and I think this was really well done.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about the balconies, or on the elevations, they're referred to as wood railings and deck. Are they wood decks?
It's actually a composite, a Trex.
Okay, is that
It's deck, it's
sufficient for the fire department?
They're
There's
sprinkled. They are sprinkled. All those decks are sprinkled. They do have a dry head. They are required. Yeah, we've been down that road.
We'll have to talk with the fire department with regards to that. Can you guys hear me out there? Okay. We'll have to talk with the fire department about that. I mean, the note in the staff report was wanting to make sure that this option was there, because we know through past experiences, people like to grill out.
We
so.
would not permit grilling. There will be no
Okay.
barbecues on the balconies. We will provide barbecues around the clubhouse.
Okay.
No
So-
grilling on the balconies.
Then I have no comment. Thank you.
Okay, then let's move on. Okay.
Although I find that a shame, I guess I
I
agree
agree.
with it. I want to make a comment regarding the open space on this ultimate plan here. I think you've done an awesome job as far as creating large open spaces, which don't typically exist in a lot of residential developments. There's smaller open spaces, but there's a couple really large open spaces that I would hope every effort, even when you're pursuing additional parking, that you can preserve that. Specifically, the multiple housing or multiple resident houses or apartments to the north and east. That's an outstanding central space, and I hope you can
Thank you.
keep that.
Yeah.
As far as how this development is set away from Route 45, there's significant distance from the development as it turns into row houses and then it turns into the larger buildings. I honestly don't feel that there's going to be a huge visual connection between Route 45 and the large units. People are going to see the stand of trees, and they're going to see the large park in between Route 45 and where the large units begin. They will see a couple of those row houses, the first two blocks of row houses. But if you're looking at the full length of the development from where it ends to the northwest and where it begins to the southeast, that is a very long distance. That's a very long distance. And if you're only seeing those two blocks over that long span, that's a success story. It really is, because you're preserving a lot of the rural character that's along Route 45 by doing that.
Yeah.
You've congregated most of the development to the north on this site, and that's where the value is as far as entering the site and its visual connection to Route 45, even as it increases in width for a 4-lane road, which will happen at some point in time. So, I think that that's a very valuable component of this. You know, if and when that commercial entity goes on to that one triangular portion, it almost should be there. We've talked about this a long time ago, that there should be multi-use components to this site. This is something that we talked about probably, I don't even know, 5 years ago? I don't know, Mr. Nix, when was that? Was it you? Was it you, Mike? That we talked about that? Because, and we talked about, everything from dry cleaners to, fast food restaurants to all kinds of things on that portion of the site, correct? And when we're including, just a couple of components of commercial use.
Yeah, and it's not a big building. And the scale of the building, I think you're talking about a little over it's a 2-acre site, but you add on the detention, it's really, over 3 acres. The building that was planned, which we're not changing really from what is approved on the site from our previous zoning, was a building that serviced, at that time, was going to service office and industrial buildings, and it was going to be support retail. Well, it even makes more sense, in my opinion, when you now have a residential component, to have that support retail and people not have to leave the site to get to it.
Sure.
And I don't believe we're allowed fast food, if I remember correctly.
Well, I can't remember what it was, but you know what? It made sense then, and as this was coming for us this time initially, I was looking for it. I'm glad there's still potential for it in that area.
But with regard to that, the request is for approval of a special use permit for that commercial lot to allow drive-throughs, either a bank or some sort of other drive-through facility. Since we don't know what the use is, what the drive-through would be, or what that would do to the lot, and I haven't talked to all of my friends up here, would you be amenable to, although the zoning would be there, the B1, that the special use for the drive-through, you'd have to come back when you have a use?
I think we have to come back anyways. So it's always our understanding that the description was there, the site was laid out for it, but we've got to come back to you with the building, the uses, et cetera, when we come back, so.
Yeah, but I'm a little concerned about approving a special use permit for a drive-through
It's already approved.
today.
The
Well,
It's existing now?
I'm not sure it is. Once you turn this all into a PUD, you may lose everything that's underlying there.
Well,
You're the attorney, I'm not.
I mean, John, you can
And-
comment on that.
Well, you are correct. However, by rezoning it to a B1, you are establishing certain commercial uses that would be allowed to go there. It would just, what the chairman is asking
Right,
is,
is the approval.
get the zoning, you don't get the drive-throughs until you come back to show us exactly what it is. And you do have to come back anyway, because site, landscaping, building approvals, you have to do the engineering for whatever gets built there and the like.
I think theoretically, that is exactly what they're asking for. I don't think they're asking for approval to do that, because that is a special use that cannot go forward without, if you go to the B1
We are approving
zoning-
it right now.
I don't know.
No, you're just approving the zoning change to a
No.
B1.
Look at 3.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's my
there.
concern.
And I wouldn't support approving a special use for something that we don't know what's going to be
Oh,
there.
approval of certain special use
So
permits.
we
No.
can leave it there and vote on it, but I will tell you right now, I would vote no.
Okay.
So, our question is, would you be,
It's your choice.
it's your choice. We can vote on it. I don't know how, you've heard one vote, not the rest of us. I don't get a vote unless it ties. But to have us vote on the zoning, and there are special uses that are within the zoning classification you have to come back for, versus asking us to approve special uses today of
I don't have
drive-through.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, and I'm not sure
Tell
quite
us-
candidly, are we talking to the right person for
Who
that
are you?
approval?
Yes.
Okay, because I
Who
know,
are you?
Mike Rolfs.
Right.
I'm the petitioner for this whole project.
that I know. Okay. 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 I'd like to go back to the traffic for a second. And I'm probably going to mispronounce it, Mr. Rabin? Rabin. He brings up probably a very legitimate point, that those of us that are in the community, and you're in it, at least because your building is very close, that this is a very challenging portion of roadway during certain hours of the day, if we put it that way, Route 45. And we're talking about putting aside that there's a lot of people on that road already, and this is only going to add a little more to that lot of, but there are residents that we're talking about putting in and residents across the way. Is there anything from a traffic perspective that can be done that would lessen the impact on 45? And I know at the very extreme, you say it's right in, right out, and that's a very extreme. I'm not suggesting that. But are there other ways to encourage the alternate use out the so-called side door, back door, whatever we're calling it, to try to avoid a lot of these, people being dumped onto a roadway that right now is, we've all admitted, is probably marginal in its level of service right now?
I think what'll happen eventually is that people will find out. I mean, traffic is like water, it just finds the point of least resistance.
Okay.
And I think people that live there will find out if they're going to, now, if you're going to the northwest there's only one way you can go. You're going to go out onto 45.
That's the right out, and that's not really
Right.
a problem.
If you're going to the south on 45, the southeast, you might take the east-west connection because you'll know it, because you're a resident, and travel down and end at Woodlands and go out and go to the east on Woodlands. Limiting access there, I think, would be a mistake, because then what you're doing is just pushing someone else's traffic movement to another spot.
I understand.
Let's say, if
I
it's right in, right out, it's not going to happen because they're down there. We've already, by virtue of the east-west connection, eliminated the easterly right in, right out, which is nice, one less point of contact. But I guess in short, no.
Okay, well,
Not geometrically, not construction-wise.
while you are there, whoever is the person who wants to speak with respect to actually constructing this project, what is the traffic impact and what is the intention regarding construction traffic to and from this site during the period of construction?
Yeah, that's.
In other words, are we going to add,
Turn it over to-
are we going to add construction materials to 45 at that time?
Turn that mic on. Tim,
Yes, turn this one off?
turn that one on.
Turn that one off.
Here you go.
Okay. All right. All right.
Our intent for the construction of the project would be obviously working within the village's normal construction hours during the course of the Monday through Saturday allowable times. The project itself will start on the north side of the property, and we'll work our way back toward the south side of the property, toward Route 45.
Which, is your access off Route 45 for construction or off this back door entry?
Well, quite honestly, now that we've got the back corridor, we haven't given thought to that, a lot of thought to that. Obviously, it's easiest for everyone to come through 45 and into the property, but that's something we could consider.
Okay, if you, I know the typical is 7 a.m. If you use the 7 a.m., I guess to 8 a.m. hour, the first hour of the day, is that, I assume, is also part of the peak hour for AM traffic movement? Okay. Okay. Okay, so but you have to talk in a microphone, remember, that's the rule we have. Okay, so really what I'm following up on is, I'm not looking to prolong by saying you only work between 10 and noon or something, but I'm looking, is there a way to, because that probably is even slower moving traffic and has harder turning, et cetera, to minimize the impact on 45 for residents and people traveling there in the construction portion of this?
The reality of the construction day is such that the workers themselves, the tradesmen, will be coming in at 6:30 in the morning. They beat traffic. They get out, they get early, they have their cup of coffee, they congregate, they hang out in the property before they actually start rolling out the tools.
Okay.
The things that you're going to experience from 7 o'clock till probably noon, 1 o'clock, are the deliveries at that time, deliveries of materials, deliveries of, well, quite honestly, the materials that are needed to pull this whole thing together. But rarely, other than concrete trucks that you might get first thing in the morning, rarely are you going to get a big backup of material suppliers in there at first thing in the morning.
Yeah, 7:30 to 8:30 is the peak hour of the street. 7:30 to 8:30.
Okay.
7:30 to 8:30 is the peak morning hour of the street.
Okay. I know we have certain specific rules for construction. Is there a way, from a cooperative standpoint, to try to, I'm going to use the word stage, but that's really not the right word here, to stage or coordinate that so, to the extent you are getting deliveries or concrete deliveries, we're not going to hit exactly, the perfect storm in terms of peak hour?
Are there ways?
Yeah.
There's always ways.
Are you
Is it-
willing to
is
do
it
that?
I think we consider that, but it's not desirable to put those types of restrictions on trying to get these houses up as efficiently, as quickly as we possibly can, so that we're not a nuisance, and get rid of the construction as quickly along Route 45 so that everybody can go back to living their day-to-day life.
But this is an unusual nuisance for terms of construction, because it's a nuisance that really is adjacent really to commercial uses, whereas the traffic nuisance we're talking about impacts more residents and residential uses. So I'm saying, is there a balance that can be made there somehow?
I think there's something we could consider, maybe talking with staff as the, future ideas and thoughts, but.
Are you
something that we just
suggesting
not-
maybe that deliveries occurring from 6 a.m. to 8:30 access through Milwaukee Avenue versus 45?
I don't know if that's any better. I mean, you have to ask Dave. I mean, I don't know.
We can try to work with them and we can talk to them during during the pre-con meeting for the entire project. I mean, I think you touched on it though. You want to get them in and get it out of here. And the biggest impact to residents, as Steve knows, is going to be when they start working on 45 and they redo the cross-section of 45 along the entire frontage, because it's going to impact everybody along that frontage for, 60 or 90 days, depending on the weather.
Absolutely. The reality is, we've had a lot of construction over the years. I lived right up the street here for 15 years, and, everyone talks about Route 45 as the traffic. I understand it, I lived it, I get it, but I don't think there's been any other restrictions on any other communities that have been built for times of materials coming in and out, whether it's Cuneo or Centennial Crossing. I lived through that while I was a resident here as well. So we want to be fair and reasonable with some of these requests as well.
Yes, but that's probably not a real good answer, because you're asking for a PUD, not an as-of-right development. So
I mean.
Like we said, we'd be more than happy to
Okay.
sit down and talk to
And,
staff.
and, you know, for somebody that drives on 45 every day in the morning and at night, and I do, whether this is a residential development or it would have been a commercial development, as we have looked at in the past, you're still going to have to build something there. If I had my choice, it would still be Kelly's Camp. And if I had my choice, you know, Sanctuary Point and Riders Court would have been acquired by the village and it would be green space.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we don't live in that world. And the owners of this property have a right to develop it. And if it were within the zoning of the village, they wouldn't even need to come to us. And while I appreciate from somebody that drives and do not like to be behind Conway trucks and all the other things in the morning and at night, I feel it's a burden to put on the builder that I don't believe is fair. That's just my opinion. I appreciate it because I drive up and down, but I don't think it's fair.
Well, I mean, there will be some things we'll be able to do. I mean, dirt on the roads, mud on the roads.
Agree with that.
Those types of things. If it becomes a traffic or if there becomes a traffic problem at that intersection caused by construction, then we'll have to have a broader discussion with them as we move forward. I mean, yeah, I mean, again, it is a balancing act.
Right.
So,
And I just hope that residents realize we're all residents. And again, my choice is Kelly's Camp, but that isn't going to happen. And something's going to be built there. And I personally think from a traffic perspective, this is more desirable than the previous use we looked at because you would be dumping a lot of traffic at peak times. But that's just my opinion.
Well, it's a good opinion. There's a couple there's a couple things that we need to consider also. It's logic, you know. Yeah, you can bring materials in at certain times of day, but materials are needed at specific times of day. It's not like working in a high-rise downtown where it doesn't matter whether it's light outside or not. In this environment, workers could start at 4 in the morning, they could start at 3:30 in the morning. There's noise issues. The village doesn't allow it to occur.
Right.
I think you're making a lot of sense. And if this parcel is going to get developed at any point in time, there are going to be some inconveniences at some point in time. The biggest inconvenience for 45 is going to be when 45 is modified.
That's exactly right. And I remember when Riders Court came here, and the concern was when 45 is developed into 5 lanes, I think what does it go 35 feet in each direction from center point? That's going to have an impact on that development. And the developer stood here and said, no, we think that's not going to be a problem. We're going to berm it, and it's going to be an issue, and it's going to impact the value of those homes, simply because you're plopping in a 5-lane highway.
These folks are going to be trying to protect those big oak trees too.
And-
So controlled access onto the site is going to have to be
Yes.
placed where it's not going to be affecting these large trees.
And again, I want to stress, we do care what residents think. We're all residents. But the fact is, it's property that can be developed. And, you know, I look at this as a really good use of the property. And I think it's going to look really nice. And it's a good addition to the village. So,
Okay, anybody else?
What about the impact on the environment when you have the construction trucks and they're sitting from 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock? Are we going to regulate any of like the running trucks and the impact on the environment?
We have not in the past. In fact, I'm not sure we've ever gotten a complaint with regards to that. I mean, that would be something that the developer, we could talk with the developer on and encourage them to do that. But I can't think of a case where we've done that.
I think the tradesmen would arrive early, because I've seen that before, and they're not going to necessarily be in trucks. They're going to be in personal vehicles of some sort.
Well,
the
and
diesel trucks, I can't see. Concrete, obviously, you want to get it there and dump it. You don't want it sitting around.
They're going to get in and get out.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the supply guys are going to dump their loads and go.
I've never really. I mean, diesel trains are worse because they'll sit there and run forever, but not. Yeah.
Right.
It's something that I've noticed near construction a lot.
Sure.
So this is the air quality that you're talking about. Until we're able to create large vehicles that can haul heavy material that don't burn diesel fuel, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do anything about that.
John, on point, on your condition number 20, you talked about consistent with the previous approval granted Hamilton Partners, a 6-foot bounce for detention basins may be used instead of maximum of 4.
Right.
Does the fact that this is changing from a commercial or a business park development into a residential type development, should that have any impact on that?
I don't think so. I mean, what we
Are there
want to
any
do is,
safety concerns in that regard?
well, they'll have to, as a part of the design, I believe there'll be safety ledges that'll be put inside the pond. So if somebody steps into the pond or rolls into the pond, there's a ledge that will keep them from going fully immersed unless there's a flood condition. The bounce, what it does is it allows the sides on it to be a little bit more vertical, which decreases the size of the footprint of it and creates additional tableland in and around the pond itself. So that was the intent, both with the original development and with this, that allows them to maintain that option if they want to do that.
Right, I see that. I was just concerned that now we have residents here, that could be children in the area that,
And again, I think that safety ledge deals with that aspect
Okay.
of it, so,
was that incorporated in the initial?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to comment on the conditions?
Yeah.
Can I just make one more point for the residents? Just so you know, this commission will vote on this, and then it goes to the village board, and the village board ultimately is the approver of the project. I didn't know if you knew that, the process, so. Well, this is the first time we've seen it in a point. Sometimes people will come to us for our input in the design, but this is the first time there's always public hearings when we're going to vote on and approve things, so.
You're close. In your packet, there's a series of conditions that you'll find in there. As the chairman said, this is probably the longest list of conditions that we've had. And I'm going to add a couple additional to it, or recommend a couple of additionals. You'll note that there are 6 variations that were requested. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. You know, the couple I will touch on. The setback between the buildings, typically we like to push them out in a way, but in this instance, by allowing the buildings to be somewhat closer together, again, you're allowing for additional green space to be obtained. I'll also note, with regards to the code requirements, the reduction or the variation needed for both the unit sizes in the multifamily and the row homes. You see what the village code requirements are and what they're requesting, and that's reflected in the plans that you saw tonight. Other conditions, going back to the comment with regards to the zoning, the portion of commercial zoning, you'll notice that if the board does approve this, that the ordinance 2009-039 would be voided, so there would be no carryover from that. There will be an REA document that will need to be reviewed and approved by the village attorney that deals with maintenance and conservation language for the preservation area and also in and around the detention basins and how that will occur. You will also note in your packet under item 4, there are no signs that are provided. The signage will come back to you at final approval. There'll be a comprehensive sign package that they have to do, both street signs, development monument signs, and then wayfinding signs inside the project itself. And that'll be a package that'll be designed and presented to you at final approval. There may be additional impacts or updates to the traffic impact study that may be required, and Tim knows that in talking with village engineer Dave Brown. We'll need to select the material samples and the like as we go forward here. We'll need detailing on the lighting. Again, one of the issues or concerns that we have is the use of wall pack lighting on the individual units and creating these bright spots versus, other ways of dealing with that, either pathway or overhead lights that have a downward spread. we need to locate the mailboxes on site. They'll be working with the post office to do that, and that's very common, again, with multifamily. Adam, we've asked them to add bike racks internal to the project. Tree survey will be used as a basis for the tree preservation plan. What we're basically saying is, we want this area fenced off, and we want your tradespeople to stay out of it. And if we find them in there, if we find building materials in there, that gives us the ability to shut the job down. Again, that's the importance of preserving that area, and they understand that. I'm sure, Scott, you've worked in some communities over east of here that deal with that, so. Roads, again, we're recommending that the roads all be privately owned and constructed to public road standards. We've also requested or recommended that a couple of the access driveways in front of a number of the buildings be increased to 22 feet wide. Village Engineer Brown requested that, concerned with how narrow they are with, you have double loaded parking on either side backing out into each other, so want to make sure that's wide enough to accommodate that. I will note up in the northwest corner of the project in Pod A that there is an emergency access connection that will be created onto what is property owned by Corporate Woods Association LLC, and which also houses ZF Industries. There's a gate up there right now, and what we're asking them is that they will put a hard connection in there with a gate and a Knox box, so it provides a third access for emergency if there in fact was a problem up
So
there.
fire and rescue can get in there. if
Correct,
they need to.
absolutely. So, in Pod A, staying up in that area, as you will note, we're suggesting that Road F in that pod be one-way. Instead of increasing the width of the road, make it one-way. That would circulate basically from west to east around that circle, and it would terminate into Road A.
Could I stop you for a second?
Hmm?
Can you go back to 15?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what you wrote.
If you look at buildings 1, 2, 4, and 5, and then 9 and 12, there's small access driveways in there in front of the buildings. What we're asking is that driveway width be increased from 20 to 22. What it basically does is it creates two 10-foot lanes, and then you have a foot of gutter flag on each side, getting you to the 22-foot width. Still narrow, but still it provides a little bit more width for cars to maneuver in there. So.
I got you now. Okay, thank you.
For the 45 Route 45 improvement, we're suggesting the urban cross-section being used, which basically means there's going to be curb and gutter added along there, especially along the deceleration lane, acceleration lanes coming along that section. We'll need IDOT approval. We touched on the basin. One thing that they didn't touch on was the bike path connection that'll be created across the frontage of the property. One of the things that we're concerned with is how it will transition at the southeast corner of the property. I want to make sure that they're going to have to raise that elevation to meet the shoulder on Route 45, and that was communicated as a part of the engineering. So, fire department turning radius, they'll do that across the site. Sump pumps and downspout connections need to be made into the storm sewers. That's a common requirement throughout all of our developments. Plumbing stack and vent ducts, earth tone or black. That's consistent with how we dealt with the multifamily up in Greg's Landing. We've also talked to them about the chases that will be created and making sure that those are soundproof so that you don't hear slushing water as somebody flushes the toilet upstairs. So, and we've talked to them about that, and they're good on that one. There'll be various developer contributions that will be made both to the school districts, the Park District, and also Lincolnshire Riverwoods Fire Protection District. For the commercial lot, it'll come back before the commission and ultimately the village board for site, landscaping, architectural plan approvals. And again, if you choose to not grant special use permit for the drive-throughs, then it would require a come back for something like that, if in fact there's anything like that ever came before us.
And this entire site is located all in one
Correct.
fire district, all in one school districts, all in one library district?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Compliance with all ordinances and standards, just to make sure we don't miss something. In Pod B, what we're asking is that they work with the staff to increase the number of parking spaces, and I think we can come up with a number of spaces to improve that, the ratio there. We would also encourage them to work locally with our building supply stores to shop locally here. And then the 32nd condition is, working with the staff and the developer to try to limit the impact, construction impact on the adjacent residents. We'll try to find some ways to do that if possible.
And just one question. We are looking at this with just the one entrance on 45 across from Writers Court and then the access road going into the business park. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And again, what we'll do, the request is to grant preliminary approval of the site plan. And you can note that as a part of your recommendation if you'd like. I mean, we'll work with them and ultimately, if you wanted to throw condition number 33 on, that the right in, right out across from Sanctuary Point goes away. If you wanted to specify that.
I don't.
It will automatically once we get through that, so.
I think it makes the plan much more attractive having the east exit.
But are you asking for it anymore?
No, are you asking for the two?
You're not asking for it, so that really answers our question.
Well, I just wanted to make sure what we're voting on, it's not in there.
John, can we go back to number 30?
Which one's that? Oh,
No, I see now your number 30. That's
Okay.
the parking issue. Because I know that it would require, I believe it would require a variance for them to have what they're asking for right now, correct? As far as the parking spaces? The number that they're asking, that they've put in their proposal right now?
Well,
You're talking about working with them, but unless they get to a certain number, wouldn't it still require them to have a variance?
well, for that pod, what you would be doing as a part of the PUD is recognizing that the ratio of 1.65, I think is what it is substantially less than the 2.3. And what I'm suggesting is that we can raise that ratio to improve that while not necessarily achieving the 2.3. So that's what I'm basically saying.
Okay, so I guess my
So
question is.
yes, there is a variation.
So a
I
variation for
apologize.
that pod, so do we have to state that it's gonna be a variation for that pod? Or a variation for the, would it be a variation for the total site?
Because it's not subdivided, isn't it, the site?
Could I just
Well,
clarify?
technically it is.
We're at 2.45 overall. So overall, we're well in excess. It's the allocation within,
Okay, then we got the wrong numbers then.
yes, I understand that. It was a glitch. The absolute count is 746
Right.
spaces. Excuse me.
I think because you're not
It's
asking.
2.45.
Because you're not subdividing what we were referring to as the pods into separate zoning lots. I think we have to look at it on a site basis, but the allocation that you mentioned.
Right.
If
and
you
that's
work with
what we-
staff
We're
on
happy
that.
to work with staff. We
Okay.
meet the code overall, but we recognize John's point. We'll work with staff to get a better distribution.
Okay, that's my fault. I was just reading what we got and
Right.
it said we didn't meet it, so now.
And you will-
Now I find out we do.
And you
Well,
you will agree that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put a lot of parking down on the south end
I
when they
agree.
need it up
need
in the
to
north
fix-
end.
They need to fix
Well-
it up in that area, if possible, if at all possible.
And see, I think the key thing to remember there is that when you have the row home, they provide 2 parks in the garage and 2 on the
Right.
pad behind it. So technically speaking, you have 4 parking spaces, and that's traditionally how we've approved those across the village.
Right.
And that has worked really well. But that also impacts your parking ratio across the site, and it's advantageous for the petitioner. But again, we're more concerned about the apartments and specifically with the B, Pod B areas. So, and I think we definitely can work through these and enhance that number to a higher.
And you will do that prior to it coming back here for,
Yeah,
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we can note for the record that you've provided zoning code section 18.1 comments, which will make part of the record. 18.3, I did write 1, but it is 3. We understand you're asking for a number of things this evening. rather than rereading all the conditions, we'll simply make those conditions a part of each of our motions. Otherwise, we'll be here well into the new year. The first request you have, and we have a standing motion to approve on this commission, is a motion to recommend approval to amend the zoning classification from OR&D Office Research and Development to R7 Multifamily Residential PUD and B1 General Business for the property, subject to the 32 conditions that Mr. Kalmar explained. And I guess the 33rd, which is not really a condition, but your amendment to your submission to remove the right-in, right-out at the eastern portion of the Route 45 frontage. Okay?
And I have a question on that.
Uh-huh.
Finish your motion and then we'll.
No, that's really it.
Okay. To what degree do you feel that that is removed? Is it removed up to the access drive to those row houses?
I think the question was how much of that right-in, right-out we would remove?
Yeah.
The plan is contemplated would leave the cul-de-sac in place. There were comments here that suggested, could we consider some alternatives and get rid of more of that asphalt? Yes, now that we have that possibility of going to the east, we would revisit that and see if we can reduce the asphalt, increase the green space, the buffer along 45.
Great.
Okay. Don't leave. Mr. Kalmar brings up another point, which is probably sensible at this point. So you get some direction, and I know it's going to be subject to additional work. If you can bring up the 3 elevations again for each building. Okay, either one. For the flats, do we have a consensus that we can put as, at this point, Scheme A, Scheme C, or Scheme D?
I like
I'm
D.
okay with any of them.
I don't care, but D, I'm good with D.
Scott?
D.
Consensus is D.
Consensus would be D. Can you show us the other one, please? Okay. Scheme A, Scheme C, or Scheme D again?
I'm going to be difficult, but I'll go with D.
Okay.
I like A, but
You don't care, right?
C or D?
C or
Not
D?
A.
Okay,
I
not
like
A.
D.
D.
You know, D's fine.
Okay,
D's
so,
fine. I just wish someday we can all approve something that's a little bit more aggressively colorful.
like A?
Exactly.
I'm there with you, but
I'm just saying.
okay. All right, so you have some, okay, so now we have the motion with the various conditions. We need a second. And this is just on the recommendation to amend the zoning classification.
Now,
Yep.
does it say that the triangle is the B1 portion?
It's on.
Does it say that in this
it was on
motion?
something I saw. Where did I put it? I thought I had it.
Don't we I mean, it's not a separate lot, is it?
No. I thought it was described somewhere.
It's lot 1 and outlot C. So if you wanted to be specific with which portion would be
Yeah.
B1,
Good point.
then we could add
Fair enough.
that to it.
Okay, let's just add that because we don't have a second yet. So it's lot 1 and outlot C?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, now we need a second.
Second.
Any discussion on just the rezoning? Okay, we need a roll call.
Mr. Baloo?
Yes.
Ms. Cotton?
Yes.
Mr. Hesner?
Yes.
Mr. Heidner?
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone? Mr. Gorog?
yes.
Chairman Morse?
Yes. Okay. Secondly, we have a motion to recommend approval of a special use permit for a planned unit development to allow development of a mixed-use development consisting of multifamily residential and future commercial buildings along with certain variations, including but not limited to building height, setbacks, and parking requirements, but subject once again to the conditions that we previously referred to, and the amendment by the petitioner with regard to the easternmost Route 45 access. Okay, we need a second for that.
Are we, it says signage. We're not approving signage.
No.
He didn't say it either.
Did I say that?
Sorry.
No, you didn't say it.
Oh, good, okay, good.
It says that in here, but you didn't
Oh,
say
no,
it.
no, I'm reading this one.
Now go to the back.
The
sorry.
back one?
The back one.
Okay,
sorry.
so we need a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, and this, remember, is the special use permit we're voting on. Okay, we need a roll call?
Mr. Gorog.
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone. Mr. Heidner.
Yes.
Mr. Hesner.
Yes.
Ms. Cotton.
Yes.
Mr. Baloo.
Yes.
Chairman Morse.
Yes. Okay, you had initially asked for us to recommend approval of certain special use permits to allow various drive-through type facilities, and by what we've heard this evening, you are voluntarily agreeing to remove that from consideration this evening, is that correct? Okay, and for the record, we have that's correct, so we're not going to vote on that. Next, we have a motion to recommend preliminary site and landscaping plan approval, subject to the conditions that we previously described and subject to the amendments to the site plan with respect to the easternmost Route 45 right-in, right-out being removed. We need a second for that. Okay? And we need a roll call for that.
Mr. Baloo.
Yes.
Ms. Cotton.
Yes.
Mr. Hesner.
Yes.
Mr. Heidner.
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone. Mr. Gorog.
Yes.
Chairman Morse.
Yes. Okay. Next, we have a motion to recommend preliminary approval of the architectural elevation and signage plans pursuant to the aforementioned conditions and with the two almost consensus comments regarding color schemes. Okay, but not signage, which I
Yeah.
said but shouldn't have said. That will come back later. So it's motion to recommend preliminary approval of the architectural elevation plans, subject to the aforementioned conditions with the two recommendations or consensus statements regarding color palette. We need a second on that,
Second.
And just to clarify, that's scheme D.
Yeah.
Okay.
for both.
Yes.
And it's, wasn't a condition, although I'll make the comment, that we added shutters on the
Oh,
elevation, the rear elevation, the garage elevation.
For the row homes.
Right.
okay, good point. Okay. Do we have, did someone second that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. We need a roll call on that?
Mr. Gorog.
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone. Mr. Heidner.
Yes.
Mr. Hesner.
Yes.
Ms. Cotton.
Yes.
Mr. Baloo.
Yes.
Chairman Morse.
Yes. And then lastly, we have a motion to recommend preliminary approval of the plat of, I guess it's actually re-subdivision, for the Oaks of Vernon Hills, a planned unit development, subject to the aforementioned conditions and the statement this evening that the right-in, right-out easternmost access is removed from the requested plans and subdivision. So we need a second for that.
Second.
Any discussion on the plat of subdivision? Okay, we need a roll call on that.
Mr. Baloo.
Yes.
Ms. Cotton.
Yes.
Mr. Hesner.
Yes.
Mr. Heidner.
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone. Mr. Gorog.
Yes.
Chairman Morse.
Yes. Okay. And this is scheduled how?
We'll be going to the committee of the whole. I don't have a date yet.
Okay, we appreciate your time. This evening, we have no development review. I'm not sure we have to discuss anything other than wish everyone a happy holiday.
Correct.
And then we have the approval of the minutes of November 28th, 2012, which are in our packet. If there's no comments, we can do that by acclamation. So we need a second to approve them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those are approved. If there's nothing else, we have a standing motion to adjourn.
I'll just,
Unless you wanna add
let me give you really a quick heads up. The next time we will be meeting, it will likely be for the public hearing related to the mall. So we'll be looking at either January 23rd or 30th. And this will be a public hearing to consider a whole myriad of things related to the improvement, expansion, alcohol service, certain variations for signage, the whole 9 yards. What you saw in July has been refined, but is very similar to what you see now.
Did the village board have a meeting after we met and had our discussions?
No,
So there's been no further input from them on
not at this point.
Is our meeting times adjusted in the new year?
No,
7:30 still?
that's the consensus.
And we don't, the signage, I mean, not the signs that they were proposing for the mall, have they been installed anywhere at, like, a Old Orchard or anywhere?
This tall sign has been installed at Old Orchard, coming off of 41. However, it does not have the video screen in it, the LED screen. So you'll get a sense of the height and massing of what that sign is. Now, they have changed that sign since that, and I don't think it's not that same design, but it does give you a sense in terms of the height and the light, so. So they've done some improvements to the signage.
Okay.
So I guess we can vote. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? We're adjourned. Thank
Thank you.
you.